Hey, everybody, welcome back to A Better Computer podcast, where we are talking about a couple topics that I think are very fun. So, last weekend, I wrote an article called Apple Will Kill iPadOS. And it's admittedly a pretty spicy take. It's admittedly a headline that's supposed to entice you to click in, but I don't think it's clickbait. It is literally what I am arguing. I am saying Apple will remove the iPadOS name and everything will run iOS from phones to tablets, and then Macs will eventually get touch, and that's a whole thing. Maybe I shouldn't have conflated that in this argument, but yeah, I think that iOS is going to get a little bit more complicated, and the reason why is this guy. Well, not exactly this. This is a 3D model of what we expect the iPhone Fold to look like later this year. And basically, when unfolded, this is going to be an 8-inch touchscreen. Now, an 8-inch touchscreen is interesting because that is the exact same size as the iPad mini, or at least it's within like a half inch or so of the iPad mini. So what's it going to mean when Apple has an 8-inch tablet touchscreen form factor in a phone and an iPad? And what's going to happen in another year or two when inevitably we get the Pro Max version of this folding phone and there's like a 10-inch screen when you unfold it? Like what are we going to do at that point? Is the software different? Is the software the same? Like how is this all going to work? And I guess we don't know. We'll find out this fall when Apple eventually actually announces this product for real, but for now we can just kind of guess. And what I would suggest is that my prediction that Apple is going to get rid of the iPadOS name and everything's just going to run iOS in their kind of touch-first devices, I don't think it's that crazy. If we go, I found this while I was kind of researching. I found this video from November where someone had basically tricked an iPhone 17 Pro Max to think that it's an iPad, and that exposed the full iPadOS interface from the dock at the bottom to the control center to multi-window to stage manager. Like, all of it is available, and it's janky. Like, if for video viewers, you can kind of see it right here. It's not perfect by any means, but that's because this device wasn't supposed to show this UI. Obviously, with the new folding iPhone, it will be intended to show some sort of tablet-style UI. And I would suggest it's literally already there in the code. It's literally in iOS already because iOS and iPadOS are the same code base, just with flags based on the device you're running on to either display iOS or iPadOS in kind of the About screen in the Settings app and to expose specific features like this. But they're the same thing. They are the same code base. And if we kind of go deeper into this, if I pull up the simulator, and I'm sorry this is a video-centric thing, I'll try to describe it as I go. But basically, I have my app Quick Notes running here on an iPhone, right? It's a single column interface. It takes up the full screen. And as I add notes and save them, they'll be added to this list. And when I tap on one of them, the contents of that note will take up the full screen as well. The same app with the exact same code runs on iPads as well, and it has a different UI. So when running on an iPad, the list of notes goes on the left side in kind of this column. And when you tap on one of them or click on one of them with a mouse, it'll show the contents of the notes and all the things you can do with it in the body of the page over on the right 2/3. And so that just kind of happens. That's a very easy thing to do when developing an app. It's the exact same code base, the exact same app. And if I resize it, you can kind of see that because it'll hit a breakpoint eventually and turn into the iPhone layout, right? Once it gets narrow enough, it's literally just the same as the iPhone. And when it's wide enough, it turns into kind of what we call the iPad layout. But it's the same app. It's the exact same app. And so another thing of note before I kind of talk about the folding phone, if we go to the simulator menu, go to File, Open Simulator, and then I'm going to hover over iOS 26.4. It shows devices that run iOS 26.4 that I can pull up. And it shows the iPhone 17 Pro, iPhone Air, iPhone 16e, iPad Pro, iPad mini, iPad. So in the simulator, there's not even a distinction. Like they're already saying literally in the Apple-made UI that iPads are running iOS. So anyway, what I'm saying is that we effectively are already there, and what we're discussing is marketing. And the reason I think this is interesting is because when we have this 8-inch folding iPhone, right? It's an iPhone with an 8-inch touchscreen. we have an iPad mini with an 8-inch touchscreen. How are they going to work? Are they going to work the same? Are they going to work differently? I would not expect for the unfolded view on the iPhone Fold to just be one app full screen like iOS does it today. I would expect you'd be able to do multiple apps on screen, maybe even do some windowing, right? Apple thinks that windowing is a feature that belongs on the 8-inch iPad mini. Will it belong on the iPhone? Maybe. And I would say whether they do or not, whether they only do split screen or they do the full windowing solution, as we've kind of seen with that video of the iPhone 17 Pro running running window management, I think it's just flags. They'll just change a flag. It's just going to be the same thing. But I would fully expect that on the folding iPhone, I'll be able to very easily have multiple apps side by side. I'll be able to have them kind of in this layout. I'll be able to resize them. Maybe I'll be able to do more apps. Like I don't know how far Apple's going to go with it. My intuition tells me they'll be relatively conservative, but I think it'll be the same interface. Like I think it would be profoundly weird if they have one 8-inch tablet where they're like, this is the multitasking UI we think works on an 8-inch touchscreen, and then they have another 8-inch touchscreen and they're like, this is a different UI that we think is going to work for this. It's a little weird to me. So this is what I'm looking at when I'm thinking, well, it's just going to be the same, right? And at this point, we have a folding iPhone, an iPhone that has windowing, that has split screen, that does the iPadOS things. What is Apple going to say this phone is running? Are they going to say it's running iPadOS? Like this is the iPhone Fold running iPadOS. I don't think that's what they'll do. I think they'll say this is running iOS, and it's going to have literally all of the features that iPadOS has, or like 99% of them. And at that point, it seems kind of silly to differentiate between the operating systems, and that's what I was kind of getting at in this blog post, is not that iPadOS is getting removed from the world. People don't have to throw out their iPads. People can still keep getting iPads and have all these features. It's just they'll run iOS. The interface will say this is iOS, and I think that's fine, right? I think because iOS is going to go from phones to kind of like bigger tablets. One of the things that I think got me in trouble here and made me lose folks is I did suggest that the iPad Pro would no longer run this iOS interface. I suggested they would kind of convert it to macOS and maybe probably give the product a new name, but that was just kind of what I wanted, right? And I mean, this is it. Like, this is an 11-inch iPad Pro that I have right here. This is such a good form factor for a computer. I can just take it around, use it with touch if I want, and I can dock it into a keyboard. If I want to get kind of a laptop experience, I can dock it into a computer if I wanted a full desktop experience. This is incredible. This one has an M4 chip, but there's an M5 variant as well, of course. It has more than enough power, more than enough RAM to run macOS. I think we should let it do that. But I think that what I suggested in this article was that Apple would no longer let you buy a Pro iPad with iOS on it. That was maybe too much. I let the iPad Pro stick around, have it run iOS or iPadOS, whatever. But I think they'll call it iOS, and then make a new device that's very, very similar to this, very, very similar in every single way, but make it run macOS. And that's the thing I wanted to talk about as well. The second thing, this is a thing I cannot stop myself from talking about. I just am passionate about it. People lose their minds when you start to talk about adding touch to a Mac. And a big thing that really holds them up is that the interfaces are so different. It's impossible to make macOS work well with touch. You're going to ruin macOS if you do that. And I think it's kind of funny that every other operating system can handle touch and mouse input and all these other inputs, but macOS is the only operating system that is so brittle, that is so bad, that it would fall apart if we added touch. And I just think people need to be a little bit more creative, a little bit more adventurous with what they're thinking. And I think that people overestimate the difference between the interfaces. the interfaces have gotten closer and closer over the years, and every year I feel like I write a blog post about how macOS UI is not as small as you think, and it just got even more the case with Tahoe, where the liquid glass kind of design change has made it so that these apps are basically the same everywhere. So what I've done is, again, this is definitely a video first podcast, but I will include screenshots and everything for audio listeners. I have loaded up Pages with the same document on a 14-inch MacBook Pro and an 11-inch iPad Pro. And so these are using the default zoom and everything. So this is just the default UI size. And you can see the interface is basically the same, right? It's the same header, it's the same toolbar with the same buttons. And interestingly, if I have scaled these 100% accurate to size, so these aren't these aren't scaled by pixel, they're scaled by physical size. So this is how big they are in real life. If I change the opacity of this iPad and then put it on top of the Mac app, you can see that actually the buttons are exactly the same size, like literally exactly the same size, same height, same width. The exact buttons they have are a little different from one to the other. I don't actually know why that's the case, but they're the same. You can see there's a little extra horizontal padding in the iPad version. And actually, the toolbar itself, inexplicably, is actually taller on the Mac version. So that's kind of interesting. But yeah, the UI is not that different. And if you made it so that like when someone's using touch mode on a Mac, that maybe the spacing got a slightly wider, like we're there. We are there for most things. So I think that's interesting. And I also pulled up the same screenshot, but with the file menu opened, because this is one of the things people bring up all the time, that macOS it would never work with the file like the menu is so small, you'd never be able to tap those things. And if we do the same trick and kind of overlay them on top of each other, what you're going to see is that actually the menu on the Mac has larger targets in the menu itself. So the menu itself would be easier to bring up. And if we compare the menu once it's opened, we see very similar text size. We actually see slightly bigger text on the Mac, slightly smaller on the iPad. But once again, the iPad has a little extra vertical spacing between them. So similar to the menu, the control bar buttons we saw in Pages, there's a little horizontal spacing there. In the menu, there's a little extra vertical spacing. So maybe when you touch it with your finger rather than a mouse, it makes the menu items 2 pixels further apart, right? That would get us pretty much there. And so I really think people need to cool it on suggesting that the Mac is somehow like fundamentally not able to do touch, that it would ruin everything, that you need to completely redesign everything. Like these UIs are very, very similar already. There are differences. I'm not saying there aren't, but it is so similar. And Apple did a whole redesign to make Tahoe work, to make liquid glass a thing. Like they can do a big redesign, and they I guess my contention is they don't even need to do that. So that's another thing I wanted to talk about. The third thing I want to talk about, I need to reach out of camera here for a second, is an update on my ROG Xbox Ally X, which I reviewed on Comfort Zone a few weeks ago. And basically, I said it was an awesomely powerful mobile gaming system with the worst software experience I've ever had in my adult life with a piece of tech. And over the weeks after that, it just drove me more and more crazy. It drove me absolutely nuts. And so I actually fixed this. I finally built up the courage to install Bazzite on this, which is basically, it's Linux built for this device. There's special versions of Bazzite for different pieces of hardware. And once you have it installed, it gives you the SteamOS experience. So there's desktop mode if you want to get into that, but when you boot up the device by default, it's going to launch into SteamOS, and it's going to run Windows games on Linux via Steam, and it works great. And I'm happy to report that it is everything I dreamed it would be. It works wonderfully. Game compatibility is perfect. Everything that I expected to play plays great here. Sleep actually functions. This was my big complaint with the Windows OS on this, is that sleep just didn't work. It's a Windows computer. It doesn't really sleep. It sometimes sleeps, sometimes doesn't. Sometimes the lock screen just shows for hours and hours for no reason. Sometimes the fans keep going because processes don't stop when it's supposedly sleeping. Crazy, absolutely crazy. Now with this, it just works. And so just wanted to give a quick update on it. It was not that scary to set up. There were a couple steps, but it really wasn't that hard. And now that it's working, it feels like this was just a Steam machine the whole time. It feels like a new Steam Deck to me. And that is, it's just awesome. So I'm very happy about that. So that's it for me today. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you here next week on the A Better Computer podcast.